Todd Tucker has finally spoken out at the age of 52. Additionally, what he disclosed following his divorce from Kandi stunned supporters, surprised detractors, and completely changed the course of events. People believed they knew the truth for years. The empire, the picture-perfect brand, the power couple. However, Todd claims that there were times behind the scenes that nobody ever witnessed. Events that destroyed the illusion and revealed a reality he says he concealed to safeguard everything they had built together. And those details are finally making their way into the public eye today. This is the part that no one anticipated. Todd Tucker and Kandi were regarded as reality TV royalty for more than 10 years, the pair that managed to withstand the constant drama of the Real Housewives of Atlanta, the craziness of celebrity, and the pressure of the spotlight. They raised a mixed family, established businesses together, and portrayed themselves as one of the few enduring relationships on reality TV. However, admirers started to see flaws as the years passed. Initially subtle, then unavoidable. There was a noticeable impression that Todd was carrying a weight he never spoke, as well as subtle anxiety throughout conversations and arguments captured on tape. Online rumors began to circulate via Reddit threads, Bravo comments channels, and fan blogs. Everyone had an opinion, but up until today, no one had any answers, because Todd claims that there were things he concealed from everyone, even his closest friends and family, in addition to from fans and producers. He says he didn't want to make Kandi look bad. He didn't want her career to be in danger. He didn't want to ruin the brand they had worked so hard to establish. Therefore, he chose to remain silent rather than defend himself or correct the narratives. Silence, however, is not permanent. Additionally, Todd claims he is sick of taking the responsibility alone now that the marriage has officially failed. Fed up with being portrayed as the issue. I'm sick of carrying him through the mud as folks celebrate goodies. He is speaking out for the first time about what actually went wrong and why he thinks the public was never given the whole picture. This is the point at when things take an unexpected turn. Fans observed an apparently ideal combination when Todd Tucker and Kandi first got married. They were ambitious, caring, and encouraging. They were a brand together, not just a couple. The two seemed to be inseparable, a power couple that seemed to have no trouble juggling their careers and love lives. From commercial endeavors like Kandi's restaurants to Todd's job behind the scenes in production. However, some who kept a careful eye on their travels noticed something different. Discreet indications that the marriage wasn't always as harmonious as it appeared. Yes, drama is the lifeblood of reality TV, but insiders suggested that even the cameras missed some of the action. There were tense, irritated, and contentious moments that went beyond the usual marital arguments that audiences were accustomed to watching. According to the couple's close friends, Todd was a person who frequently kept his emotions to himself. He had a reputation for being devoted, understanding, and patient, but he was also quite private. According to sources, he avoided conflict even when he wasn't on TV and hardly discussed marital difficulties in public. Many people assume that his silence fueled misunderstandings. While Todd was discreetly overcoming obstacles that no one could see, fans believed the marriage was perfect. Kandi, meanwhile, kept doing well in the public eye. Her career took off. She continued to be one of Bravo's most well-known stars due to her captivating personality. She seemed calm and self-assured to outsiders, which is why Todd's eventual revelation was so devastating. They presented an image that was at odds with what millions of people thought they understood. Disparities in priorities and vision were one of the main conflicts, according to social media discussion and interviews. While Kandi placed a lot of emphasis on her career and her image, Todd reportedly believed that he was doing more of the emotional work in the relationship. Todd's supporters contend that his annoyance was understandable, pointing out that maintaining a high-profile relationship is never easy. However, detractors contend that both partners have some of the blame, highlighting the complexity of marriage and the fact that the general public rarely completely comprehends private disputes. Under the glamour, sparkle, and expertly manicured Instagram postings, the dynamic produced a quiet building of attention. Todd kept a lot of it to himself out of concern for criticism and consequences from the public. However, according to sources, years of unsaid discontent had reached a breaking point by the time the divorce was filed. What followed altered everything, from personal hardships to public admissions, and prepared the ground for Todd's ultimate shocking revelations. Publicly visible divorce is never simple. Additionally, it was nothing short of explosive for Kandi Burruss and Todd Tucker. Fans were shocked when the news first surfaced. Discussions, opinions, and conjecture flooded social media. Since the pair had withstood the demands of business, celebrity, and reality TV drama, many believed they were impenetrable. But in spite of appearances, Todd and Kandi's marriage had deteriorated beyond repair. The divorce was started following months, if not years, of unresolved conflict, according to court documents and entertainment sources. Before the separation, Todd's voice had been mostly missing from public discussions, according to observers. While Kandi took care of appearances, interviews, and even social media storylines, he stayed in the background. Despite being calculated, this quiet gave people a skewed impression of their relationship, which Todd later said was inaccurate. The divorce has been characterized as highly fraught by friends and people close to the couple. According to reports, Todd wanted to stay out of the spotlight but felt trapped. He understood that being mute would simply encourage conjecture and false information. As a result, the break was more than just a formal conclusion. It served as the impetus for Todd to eventually come forward and express his viewpoint. The public was horrified by some of the revelations that were disclosed in the filing itself. Although property and financial arrangements were discussed, people were more interested in the tiny clues that pointed to more serious issues. Disputes about priorities, family relationships, and even personal limits that had been put to the test time and time again over the years. As soon as possible, fans started putting together hints from previous Real Housewives of Atlanta shows, interviews, and social media posts in an attempt to make connections between previously unnoticeable details. However, Todd's true disclosure went beyond the divorce documents. The breakup revealed details about his relationship with Kandi that fans had never known, according to interviews he gave and remarks he made to insiders. He asserted that, although the marriage was sincere at its foundation, it was ultimately unsustainable due to a number of expectations, miscommunications, and compromises. He implied that his secret problems were hidden behind the public image of their ideal partnership. His identity, autonomy, and even his place in their family dynamic were all impacted by emotional and personal struggles. Reactions on social media reflected how serious the situation was. Fans sympathized with Todd and commended him for speaking up at last. Others chastised him, arguing that Kandi's popularity and success did not imply misconduct. The idea that Todd's admissions were shocking and contentious was fueled by heated discussions that raged on forums, Instagram threads, and TikTok videos. But in the middle of the chaos, one thing emerged. Todd Tucker had come to the conclusion that he could not remain silent any longer. He was eventually forced to reveal the side of the tale he had been keeping hidden due to the divorce, the public attention, and the years of simmering tension. And his subsequent revelation would permanently alter how millions of people perceived their relationship. Todd Tucker finally came out after years of remaining mostly hidden, and what he disclosed shocked both fans and the reality TV industry. Todd's revelations were intimate, unvarnished, and packed with information that had never been shown on TV, in contrast to the carefully manicured previews. In interviews and remarks on social media, Todd revealed marital difficulties that many viewers were unaware of. He talked about feeling excluded from important choices and frequently questioning whether his opinion was really important in their shared existence. He asserted that although Kandi flourished in the public eye, he felt unseen, ignored, and underappreciated since a large portion of his personal viewpoint was purposefully or inadvertently silenced. According to insiders, juggling work, family, and personal limits was one of Todd's main sources of annoyance. They had always presented a unified face to their fans, supporting one another's careers, going to events together, and continuing to make appearances on reality TV. However, Todd apparently thought that the dynamics were skewed behind closed doors. He frequently felt that his opinions were secondary when it came to decisions regarding their home, business endeavors, and even blended family arrangements. These revelations' content wasn't the only thing that made them so potent and contentious, it was the background. Todd disclosed that he kept quiet for years in order to safeguard Kandi Burruss's reputation and career as well as the public perception of their marriage. He maintained that he didn't want to cause her any embarrassment, misrepresent her intentions, or start needless controversy that would affect their family life. But there was a personal price for keeping quiet. He talked on the emotional toll of keeping up a front for the public while going through difficult times in private, as well as the increasing frustration and sense of invisibility. Almost immediately, social media exploded. Videos from Todd's interviews became viral on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. Every phrase was scrutinized by fans, who wondered what had been authentic and what had been meticulously edited for TV. Some people applauded Todd for finally sharing his side of the story, and commended him for his bravery. Others chastised him, arguing that disclosing complaints in public was needless or unjust to Kandi, whose career had remained prominent and well-honed over the years. However, Todd's disclosures did not end there. He alluded to more serious problems, times when expectations, emotional work, and self-sacrifices came together in ways that had a long-lasting effect on his mental and emotional health. He proposed that the reality TV format itself added to these demands. His contributions and concerns were frequently reduced to footnotes or invisible battles by cameras, producers, and plots that prioritized drama over complexity. Todd's explanation of why the public was unaware of these details earlier was one of the most talked about features on the internet. He asserted that it was a conscious decision to put family and legacy ahead of self-justification rather than resentment or animosity. Todd claimed that by remaining silent, he protected their careers, which they had worked so hard to establish, maintained stability for their kids, and prevented needless scandal. But after the divorce was finalized, Todd's viewpoint changed. He felt free, strong, and prepared to reveal what had been kept a secret for so long. And as he talked, the general people started to perceive a story that went against a lot of the presumptions, a tale of sacrifice, love, and compromise, and, in the end, the results of long-standing quiet. The consequences were immediate. Supporters took sides. Every bit of Todd's interviews was covered by the media. Hot takes, memes, and arguments erupted among online groups. The narrative was no longer limited to a marriage. It had evolved into a discussion about loyalty, trust, emotional labor, and the dynamics that go unspoken in interpersonal relationships. However, things became even more dramatic if you believed Todd's insights were the last word, because what he made public was only part of the tale, according to insiders. Additionally, there were previously undisclosed truths that would make even devoted followers doubt everything they believed to be true. Todd Tucker and Kandi Burruss always seemed like a well-groomed pair to viewers of The Real Housewives of Atlanta. However, insiders now present a different image, one that was full of personal conflict, nuanced arguments, and judgments taken behind closed doors that were impossible for a camera to record. There were times during the marriage when Todd's worries were subtly disregarded. According to several people close to the couple, it was a sequence of choices and behaviors that made him feel marginalized rather than confrontation in the conventional sense. According to friends who spoke both on and off the record, Todd frequently served as a mediator, resolving conflicts in secret and prioritizing the family's reputation over his personal opinions. Kandi's career was still thriving at the same time. She was performing, touring, and continuing to be one of Bravo's most well-known celebrities. Only the highlights, the combined appearances, the commercial triumphs, and the times of mutual happiness were visible to the public. They were blind to the innumerable hours Todd devoted to balancing family schedules, handling business operations, and frequently putting his own needs on the back burner in order to keep the peace. As usual, social media magnified any perceived disparity. Fans started making assumptions about the tension on screen by examining facial expressions, body language, and even interview remarks. Moments became viral debates when TikTok producers pieced snippets from the show, memes went viral, and threads burst with theories. For many, these messages made it difficult to distinguish between reality and entertainment, giving the impression that viewers were learning secrets long before Todd made public remarks. The concept of emotional labor. The unseen, unpaid effort Todd says he did to keep the family and the brand intact was the subject of one online debate that kept coming up. Some admirers expressed sympathy and commended him for his commitment. Others expressed disapproval, arguing that marriage is a two-way street and that Kandi's personal contributions were not diminished by her public employment. In any case, the discussion brought to light a more comprehensive truth. Every behavior is examined, and quiet can be misconstrued when fame and personal relationships collide. Todd, meantime, persisted in presenting his case in measured fashion. He made it clear that his intention was not to disparage or humiliate Kandi, but rather to provide the background for choices, disputes, and incidents that had baffled audiences for years. By sharing his experience, he demonstrated how challenging it can be to lead a private life while being watched by the public all the time. How small arguments, blown out of proportion by cameras and news reports, may lead to misunderstandings, and how the reality frequently lies somewhere in between what fans see and what insiders know. The public's response was strong. Within hours, Todd's interviews received thousands of views. Entertainment media outlets carried headlines that analyzed every word, and comment sections were overflowing with arguments. The reality TV storyline started to be questioned by both fans and critics, who questioned how much of it was true and how much had been staged for drama. In the midst of all of this, Todd's bravery in speaking up at last caused a stir, encouraging other former reality TV contestants to share their own untold tales. However, another surprise emerged just when it appeared that the discussion was coming to a standstill. It was an unexpected moment that had fans on the edge of their seats, sparked new discussions, and questioned preconceptions. Insiders claim that Todd alluded to particular occasions and private choices made during the marriage that had never been made public. Information that, if disclosed, would completely change the story. And that's precisely what took place next. A revelation that turned a divorce story into a national conversation about loyalty, love, and the human cost of living in the public eye. Following years of silence, social media was rocked by Todd Tucker's post-divorce confessions. As interviews, video clips, and insider statements started to circulate, fans, reality TV analysts, and entertainment outlets rushed to keep up. The contrast between the Polish couple that viewers had been following for years and the behind-the-scenes intricacies Todd detailed was what made these revelations so compelling. Todd made it clear in his interviews that his goal was to provide context to a narrative that had largely ignored Kandi Burruss's point of view, not to disparage him. He talked about personal and emotional struggles, concessions, and times when he didn't feel heard, experiences that Bravo cameras would never have allowed people to witness. Aspects of his account were supported by friends and insiders who pointed out that Todd had quietly taken on duties that were sometimes overlooked, such as managing the business and making decisions for the family, all the while projecting the picture of a helpful husband. Almost immediately, social media exploded. Todd's interviews were shared on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, sparking thousands of reactions, discussions, and comments. In an attempt to put together what had been going on behind the cameras, fans analyzed every word. Supporters applauded Todd for breaking years of quiet and commended him for being honest. His timing was questioned by others, who felt that some information ought to have been kept confidential. A personal insight became a cultural phenomenon as a result of the explosion of memes and fan forums. Todd's assessment on the hidden and emotional work he claimed to have done for the marriage was one of the most talked about aspects. He talked about times when he thought the public's expectations overwhelmed or discounted his efforts. His honesty struck a chord with some followers, while others questioned whether it was appropriate to share such intimate issues in public. This illustrates how difficult it can be when private lives are entwined with public scrutiny and stardom. Todd stoked rumors in fan forums and entertainment press by hinting to private disputes and choices that had never been made public. Social media pundits started examining earlier episodes of The Real Housewives of Atlanta, contrasting Todd's remarks with body language, speech, and previously broadcast confrontations. What had previously been written off as a reality TV drama now acquired a more somber perspective. Both admirers and detractors argued about whether Todd's disclosures would alter the public's opinion of Kandi Burruss or the couple's legacy. Fans who had previously admired the couple were compelled to reevaluate the portrayal of its ideal. In the meantime, a wider discussion on the human cost of celebrity and the demands of living in the spotlight was sparked by Todd's openness to talk candidly about personal issues, which encouraged others in reality TV circles to consider their own experiences. However, the issue itself wasn't the most interesting aspect of Todd's revelations. The message underneath it all was that the value of individual voice, openness, and the guts to present one side of an issue when the majority has already made up its mind. This was not just a divorce tale, it was a narrative about the power of eventually speaking up before quiet becomes assumption, the battle to strike a balance between devotion and self-respect, and public life and private truth.